For decades, the same question has puzzled everyone. How were these strange, perfectly cut stones of Puma Punku actually made? Were they cut by hand? Was some forgotten technology used? Or have we simply not yet understood the whole story? Archaeologists still haven't agreed on what Puma Punku actually was, what it looked like, or what the purpose of building such a massive structure could have been. But now the story takes a sudden turn. New age 3D scanning and extremely detailed microscopic analysis have revealed something that has shaken the old answers. The clues researchers have found inside these stones suggest that these blocks may not have been made in the way we've been told. Most surprisingly, while we have dating for the surrounding artifacts, the exact age of the stones themselves remains a major question. Are they thousands of years old or even older? No one can say for sure. And now a new theory is emerging that has stunned everyone. Did someone in the Andes 1500 years ago possess knowledge of a technique to levitate stones? Grok AI claims to be unraveling this mystery, attempting for the first time to explain how the H blocks of Puma Punku were actually created. This is where the old stories break down and the real questions begin. Before we delve into the details, please subscribe to the channel so you can be the first to see more videos like this filled with mysteries. In the Altiplano region of Bolivia, at an altitude of about 13,000 feet, there is a place that still leaves people speechless. Puma Punku, surrounded by a dry plateau and strong winds, lie stones that look nothing like ordinary ancient ruins. Many of the stones here weigh more than 100 tons, but the way they are joined together is mind-boggling. According to modern measurements, the gap between the two blocks is less than 1 millimeter in many places. Imagine after 1500 years, these joints remain as perfectly fitted as if they were installed yesterday. Locals say that not even a razor blade can fit between these joints. It sounds like a tall tale, but those who visit and touch the stones themselves agree that the truth isn't far from it. The surfaces are so smooth, the lines so straight, and the patterns so uniform that despite weathering, earthquakes, and erosion, there are no major imperfections. This is what makes the place even more mysterious. And what we see today is actually only a small part of the entire site. There was once a large, organized platform here, but over time, most of the structure has either been destroyed or scattered. The way these stones were cut, shaped, and placed in a specific layout makes Puma Punku one of the most unique ancient sites in the world. Unfortunately, the greatest damage to this place was not caused by nature, but by humans. In the late 19th century, when the railway reached this area of Bolivia, the stones of Puma Punku became a valuable resource. Large blocks were broken apart with dynamite, dragged away, and used in the foundations of railway tracks and bridges. People from that era wrote that stones were being separated with hammers, carved surfaces were carelessly broken, and entire sections were carried away. The structure that had withstood natural forces for thousands of years was destroyed in just a few decades by human progress. What was once a thoughtfully constructed platform was reduced to a scattered pile of stones. Even today, archaeologists are trying to determine the original location and correct sequence of many of the blocks, but the complete picture remains incomplete. And perhaps this incompleteness is what makes Puma Punku so mysterious. In recent years, as human eyes and tools have reached their limits, a new element has entered this mystery: artificial intelligence. Advanced AI systems like Grok are said to have detected patterns and clues in the blocks of Puma Punku, particularly the H blocks, that have eluded human observation for years. Before we delve into what Grok supposedly discovered, let's understand a little more about it in detail, so it's easier for you to grasp. We put a lot of effort into making these videos, so if you want to support our work, please subscribe to the channel. Located on the high plateaus of Bolivia, some of the stones at Puma Punku are estimated to weigh between 40 and 50 tons. And even today, the first question that arises upon seeing them is how they were transported and assembled here. Many blocks are still half buried in the ground, some are lying upside down, and some are so broken and damaged that they are difficult to identify. But amidst this destruction, the mystery persists. Despite being scattered, the site still exhibits a strange precision. This is especially true of the H blocks, which still clearly show perfectly right angles, evenly spaced slots, and parallel channels. Surprisingly, this level of finish and geometry seems far beyond the capabilities of the known stone and bronze tools of the Tiwanaku culture of that era. This is where the debate begins. Were these stones truly carved, or was something else done to them? A story has been passed down through generations in local Aymara traditions that the builders of these sites possessed stones that flowed like water, so soft that they could be molded into any desired shape by hand, and then hardened later. Interestingly, ancient Inca legends also contain contain hints of this, mentioning the ability to temporarily soften stone. In the villages, people still say that the blocks of Puma Punku were not cut, but molded. Some consider this merely a story born of wonder, but for others, it points to a lost technology, a forgotten knowledge that blurred the lines between science and craftsmanship. And so the question remains, how could a civilization nearly 1500 years ago without iron, steel, or modern machinery have created such perfectly fitted blocks, such smooth surfaces, and such balanced designs? Perhaps the answer still lies hidden within those broken, scattered blocks that lie on this desolate, windswept plateau, waiting for the world to take notice once again. Engineering marvel. If we think of Puma Punku as merely a pile of old stones, we might miss its greatest significance. In fact, this site is a marvel of engineering, forcing even modern engineers to pause and reflect. When researchers first carefully measured and understood the site, they quickly realized that not a single stone was simply thrown away. Each block was part of a larger, well-thought-out system, as if someone had first mentally conceived a complete three-dimensional design and then crafted each stone accordingly. There is repetition, clear geometry, and balance in everything. The most striking of these stones are the H-shaped blocks made of andesite. There are hundreds of these blocks, and surprisingly, they are all made in nearly identical measurements and shapes. Looking at them, it appears that they are not just H-shaped, but were designed with specific dovetail joints. Each block is cut with grooves, slots, and raised areas so that the adjacent stone slides into it and fits perfectly, like puzzle pieces fitting together. This design wasn't just for show. Archaeologists believe the true purpose of these interlocking joints was to distribute weight evenly and strengthen the entire structure. This is likely why, despite years of earthquakes, heavy rains, floods, and human interference, many of the platform's joints remain intact. Measurements reveal that in some places the gaps between the stones are less than 1 millimeter, which is tighter than many modern concrete structures. When engineers today visit this site, one thing particularly astonishes them: the uniform precision of the workmanship. The edges of most blocks are cut at perfect right angles. The parallel grooves are nearly the same depth everywhere, and the recessed slots are also precisely centered and evenly spaced. In some cases, this regularity resembles what we achieve today with computer-controlled or digital cutting machines. Underneath the crumbling ruins that appear from above lies another remarkable idea. Puma Punku wasn't simply supported by the stones placed on top, but its foundation was anchored to the rock itself. Excavations revealed that massive sandstone slabs were laid underground. Many of these slabs are approximately 25 to 26 feet long, and some are estimated to weigh over 100 tons. These were not simply dumped. Instead, flat trenches were dug in the ground, and then these massive stones were laid in a predetermined order. Most interestingly, these foundation stones were also locked together. Tongue and groove joints were made on their edges, and key blocks were placed in between, which meshed into each other like the teeth of a gear. The advantage of this was that the weight of the entire structure was spread evenly across the entire base, not just in one place. This system was designed to ensure that the stones would not slip during an earthquake, moving but not falling. In a region like the Altiplano, where earthquakes and sudden floods are common, this idea made perfect sense. It's clear that the builders knew how to make stone not only strong, but also flexible. Another notable aspect of the design is the use of metal clamps. In many places, thin channels have been found between closely spaced blocks, where eye-shaped metal staples were once inserted. These staples were not prefabricated. A mixture of copper and tin was melted on site and poured into these channels. After cooling, they were hammered flat to permanently bind the two stones together. When these metal clamps were examined with modern microscopes, traces of arsenic were found. This was not a mistake. Adding arsenic makes the metal harder and more resistant to corrosion. This technique is considered a known characteristic of pre-Columbian Andean metallurgy. This clearly indicates that the builders of Puma Punku were not only exceptional stonemasons, but also possessed a deep understanding of metalworking. It is often said that Puma Punku was simply built by hand using primitive stone tools, but this doesn't quite fit when the structure is examined in detail. Many researchers believe that the stones were not merely cut, but that a system was created that bound the entire platform together. The combination of dense andesite, extremely heavy sandstone, and the interspersed bronze provides both strength and balance to the structure. The weight of each block is not simply transferred downwards, but is distributed to the surrounding stones due to the specific interlocking shapes. This prevents the concentration of stress, reduces wear and tear, and minimizes the likelihood likelihood of cracks forming along fault lines. This same principle is still used today in the design of buildings in earthquake-prone areas. Recent digital models and 3D reconstructions have further strengthened this hypothesis. These structures clearly show that the interlocking geometry, metal clamps, and keys embedded in the foundations did not function independently, but rather as a single integrated system. As a result, the entire structure was able to largely retain its original form for centuries, withstanding weathering, earthquakes, and human intervention. Puma Punku does not appear to be merely a religious or ceremonial platform. It is an example of engineering where beauty and functionality go hand in hand. Every groove, every corner, and every socket was designed not for decoration, but for structural integrity. It does not seem that the builders worked haphazardly. They measured, planned, and assembled the stones accordingly. Digital reconstruction. For over a century, researchers wondered what Puma Punku would have looked like in its complete form. The problem was that the entire layout of the stones was not intact. The scattered blocks didn't provide a complete picture, so every attempt was based on speculation. The truth is, even today, no one knows for sure who built Puma Punku or when. Its massive stones were scattered like pieces of a forgotten puzzle, each piece perfect in itself, but the complete picture missing. Its old hand-drawn maps and field sketches failed to capture the intricate geometry of the site. They were either too crude or omitted crucial details. Then the game changed with the advent of digital archaeology, using drones, LiDAR scanners, and high-quality cameras capable of measuring down to the millimeter. Teams began to re-record the site. Every single block, every cut, every broken edge, everything was transformed into data. This information was combined to create high-resolution 3D models, and gradually a digital twin of Puma Punku emerged. This virtual copy was so accurate that in many places the error was no more than a few millimeters. A major breakthrough came in 2018 when a team from the University of California, Berkeley, led by archaeologist Alexei Vranich, used these scans to create small-scale models. Their goal was to see how the stones would actually fit together. When these model blocks were assembled, the result was astonishing. The pieces almost automatically fell into place. The joints, angles, and edges matched perfectly without any forcing. The measurements of these stones were not arbitrary. Their proportions were clearly based on mathematics, and the entire layout appears to be pre-planned, as if someone had hidden the blueprint within the stone itself. Building on this understanding, subsequent research attempted to digitally reconstruct the entire structure. By 2024, the Idea Lab and the Taiwanaku Heritage Project had captured the entire site in extremely high resolution, using a combination of drone photogrammetry and ground-based LiDAR scans. The surface of each block was scanned from multiple angles, generating virtual data that revealed alignment errors between the stone faces of only 2 to 8 millimeters, a level of precision comparable to that of modern industrial machining. The team then ran digital gravity drop simulations, allowing the stones to fall naturally under gravity in the virtual environment. The results were astonishing. The pieces settled into positions that precisely matched their original placements from approximately 1500 years ago. This made it clear that this was no mere coincidence. These simulations also showed that the H blocks and the remaining profiled stones were not isolated carvings. They were part of a modular architectural system designed to work together to support weight and withstand stress. The research didn't stop there. Using machine learning algorithms, repeated shapes and measurements were discovered in the scanned models. The software detected similar fine symmetry and proportion ratios across dozens of stones, even where erosion had worn away edges or broken corners. The AI was even able to deduce the stone's original outlines. All of this meant that Puma Punku wasn't the result of haphazard craftsmanship. It was a monument built on a precise, measured plan. These discoveries not only digitally restored a lost structure, but also transformed how we view ancient engineering. It's now clear that the work was done with such precision that it can be modeled, tested, and verified today. And perhaps most importantly, the perfection of this site wasn't a mystical miracle, but the result of method, calculation, and mastery. The secret of materials, from the perspective of Grok AI's discovery. When Grok AI combined all the available data, lab reports, and scan results related to Puma Punku, one simple thing emerged. The old story seemed incomplete. Until now, it was believed that all the blocks here were hand-cut from solid rock, but the new analysis suggests something different. Grok first noticed that not just one type of stone was used at Puma Punku. Red sandstone was chosen for the foundation, while andesite was used for the walls and the famous H blocks. Andesite is an extremely hard volcanic rock, so hard that even today, it's difficult to cut it into perfectly clean edges. But here, its faces are so flat that in many places, the heights and depths are limited to tiny fractions of a millimeter, and the edges are so sharp that touching them can cause cuts. Ian, according to Grok, this result is more perfect than could be expected with ordinary tools. This raises the question, how was this level achieved 1500 years ago? Grok's analysis raised a controversial but intriguing possibility. Could these stones not have been cut at all? Could they have been molded like some kind of ancient concrete? This hypothesis is rooted in chemical data. Microscopic crystals of sodium carbonate, called natron, were found inside some of the blocks. This is the same substance used in ancient Egypt to strengthen mortar and preserve mummies. Grok emphasized an important point here. Natron is almost non-existent in the natural geology of this area. This means that its presence inside the stones cannot be a mere coincidence. Natron acts as a flux, as this lowers the temperature required to bond minerals together and enables processes like geopolymerization. If volcanic ash, silicate, and water are mixed in the right proportions, ordinary sand can turn into a thick paste that, when dried, becomes as hard as stone. Based on this, Grok suggests that the massive blocks of Puma Punku were likely not carved, but rather cast in molds and allowed to solidify. Microscopic studies also point in this direction. Several samples revealed glassy, amorphous binder zones, structures that typically form when a chemical binder cements particles together. Natural sandstone forms over millions of years through pressure and sedimentation, but the patterns observed here suggest rapid solidification, a characteristic of artificial stone. Grok AI doesn't consider this a final conclusion, but rather a strong indication. According to it, the data clearly suggests that the story of Puma Punku is not limited to just hammers and chisels. Perhaps a combination of materials, chemicals, and techniques was used here that we are only now beginning to understand. To test their theory, the team of scientists didn't conduct any speculative experiments, but instead used materials from the site itself, local sand, volcanic ash, and natron, and mixed them in varying but controlled proportions. When this mixture hardened, the resulting material was astonishing. Its density, surface texture, and even color closely matched the sandstone used at Puma Punku. When this lab-created sample was then examined using X-ray diffraction, the results were even more surprising. The chemical signatures were identical, particularly a sodium-rich binder, which is not typically found in natural rocks. This means that the stone may not be purely natural, but rather a manufactured material. If this conclusion is correct, the implications are enormous. It would mean that the engineers of Tiwanaku possessed a form of ancient concrete technology nearly 1,000 years before the modern era. It's possible that they first brought the stone into a solution-like state and then allowed it to solidify into the desired shapes. This means that instead of cutting and shaping massive rocks by force, they might have created them using a formula. But the story doesn't end there. The sandstone only tells half the story. The real mystery lies in Puma Punku's famous andesite H blocks. In 2019, when researchers scanned these blocks using energy dispersive X-ray technology, they detected faint signals that no one expected. Tiny traces of nitrogen and carbon were present inside the stone. This was strange in itself because volcanic rocks are formed at such high temperatures that any organic matter should be completely obliterated. Yet within these stones, chemical signatures of life were sealed away. This discovery forced scientists to consider a new perspective. It's possible that these builders used an organo-mineral mixture, a combination of volcanic ash, water, and natural elements like plant sap or animal fat. Such a mixture would initially be soft and easy to mold, hardening into a stone-like substance over time. If this were the case, the stones of Puma Punku weren't merely carved with tools, but were created through a combination of human ingenuity and an understanding of chemistry. This might sound strange at first glance, but there's solid research behind it. Dr. Joseph Davidovitz, founder of the Geopolymer Institute in France, has been working on this for several decades. His team conducted experiments in the lab, mixing local soil, volcanic ash, and carboxylic acids derived from plants. The resulting stones were remarkably similar to the andesite of Puma Punku, not only in appearance but also in their microstructure and compressive strength. They exhibited the same fine grains and tiny pits on their surface, as if the ancient and modern samples had been cast from the same mold. Some argue that the organic traces found in the stones could simply be due to soil contamination or natron seepage over centuries. However, as new tests have been conducted, this argument has weakened. None of the natural andesite samples from nearby quarries exhibited these specific chemical patterns, and the consistent ratios found across different samples are difficult to attribute to mere coincidence. If the casting theory proves correct, it would mean that the builders of Tiwanaku possessed a sophisticated understanding of material science long before the advent of steel tools and large kilns. They weren't simply carving stone, but rather creating synthetic rock tailored to their needs, allowing them to achieve complex shapes. Yet the debate is far from over. With new data, the mystery of Puma Punku is deepening rather than being solved. This is why archaeologists have adopted a step-by-step approach to testing the cast stone theory. First, they examine the visible evidence, such as the razor-thin joints between the blocks, the glass-smooth surfaces, and the lack of clear tool marks. These observations don't definitively prove casting, but they certainly raise questions about how such precision could have been achieved with only hammers and bronze chisels. The mystery of Puma Punku still teaches us today that underestimating ancient civilizations can be our biggest mistake. Whether these stones were carved or molded using a special process, one thing is clear: the people of Tiwanaku were not just hardworking craftsmen, but highly intelligent engineers. Their techniques were so precise that we are still left with unanswered questions today. As new tests and research emerge, this site reveals not just history, but the limits of human ingenuity. Perhaps the truth is that the past was wiser than we are. Subscribe to the channel to watch more videos related to such mysteries.